What's your reaction to this verdict?
Look, it's a victory for the rule of law in the United States. This was a set of crimes that were committed by Donald Trump before he was president in order to protect his 2016 presidential campaign. The jury looked at a vast amount of testimony and a vast amount of evidence in a paper trail that made it very clear that he was guilty. And a jury of his peers in New York found him guilty. It's a victory for the rule of law because he was trying to intimidate the jury. He was trying to intimidate the judge. He continues to try to dismantle the legal process to protect himself. And so I think what we have here is a moment where this idea that Donald Trump was invincible, this idea that Donald Trump could never be held to account, has now been put in the rearview mirror. He is a felon. He is a criminal. He has been found guilty of 34 charges. He can no longer vote in the United States. He can no longer own a gun in the United States. He can no longer travel freely as he once could on his passport in the United States. This is a man who has been found guilty. He is going to be sentenced on July 11th, and we'll see where that goes. I personally don't think he's going to end up in jail, but I do think that he has now been adjudicated in a court of law in a case where his own attorneys had every opportunity to mount a defense. And I think it's a bad day for Trump and a good day for America.
It is just extraordinary, many of those points there, but the main one, that the presumptive Republican presidential nominee cannot now vote in the US presidential election. A stunning turn of events. We also had Donald Trump outside the courthouse repeating those false claims that he sees this all as an attempt by the Biden administration, Rick, to go after him politically. He says that it is clearly false, but these claims have resonance, don't they, with large sections of the Republican base, the MAGA base?
There is a large number of a large cohort of voters in America who believe anything Donald Trump says. If he said that he was dropped on the earth by green aliens, they would believe that with absolute certitude. They're going to, however, watch as this guy goes out and flails around, makes all these ludicrous claims, throws all these lies out there, and none of them hold up. And over again, what we came back to in this case was he could try to lie his way out of everything, but when people looked at the hard evidence, he could not escape justice. But we think that that's where he's going to end up in this campaign as well, that people are going to look at this and say, I don't want a felon sitting in the Oval Office. I don't want a man who engaged in the kind of criminality that he's been proven to have engaged in sitting in the White House for 4 more years. He's going to get 4 more years, just not in the place he thought.
So let's talk about the election. Of course, it's not just the Democratic base, the Republican base, but important independent voters who will decide the outcome in those swing states in particular. As things stand and factoring in this verdict, we see the criticisms of Joe Biden, that many see him as too old. Some Americans, according to the polls, are unhappy with the way the US economy is going. How do you see the race ending in early November?
Look, I think at this point, it is still a close race. It is still a tie ball game in a lot of the surveys. But we are going to go into these swing states. There are an increasing number of Republicans. And now the number in 2020 was about 3 to 8%. Now the number is between 7 and 25% of Republican voters who say they're not voting for Donald Trump. Now, they may not vote for Joe Biden. They may stay home on that race. They may not pull the lever in that race. But there increasingly is a cohort of Republicans in the country who are not going to vote for the guy. His base is as solid as ever, but all those Republicans in the middle who voted for Nikki Haley, all those Republicans in the middle who looked for anyone else in the primary process, this ends up being a moment where justice is going to have an impact, I think, on those swing Republican voters. And I think a lot of those people are going to end up going into either the Biden column or just not voting for Trump.
Rick Wilson, really appreciate your time on this huge day. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Wow. So, Emma.
Extraordinary, I must say, when I heard he now cannot vote.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing.
It is, and it is hard to grapple with the fact that, as I said to Rick, a man who will be the Republican presidential nominee. There we see some live pictures of Donald Trump emerging from his car, his van. back to Trump Tower or his residency, that he can no longer vote in the presidential election, at which he is will be one of the two main candidates.
A fast-moving situation because there is no precedent for this, and we are yet to hear the verdict from the sentence from the judge. We are likely to get that, we believe, in, I suppose it'll be next week or perhaps tomorrow, US time. The judge will take some time to consider what that sentence
it's July the 11th.
Okay.
In New York. Yes, there's the former president there. So July the 11th we'll get the judgment, and 4 days after that comes the Republican National Convention, where Donald Trump will be crowned as the Republican nominee. Waving to the crowd. Maybe bring up some sound to hear some of that.
A mix of cheers and boos there as Donald Trump goes to his residence in New York after that historic verdict, guilty on 34 counts of falsifying records in that trial in New York.